Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something huge, maybe one of the most stressful things people go through, buying or selling a home.
It really is. And we've got a stack of sources here, design books, economic studies, urban history, all pointing to the idea that it's way more complex than just the price tag.
Yeah, there's psychology involved, history, these hidden incentives,
Yeah,
things you don't normally think about.
absolutely. And that's what this deep dive is about. We want to pull out the really essential insights for you, understand what actually adds value, spot those hidden agendas, and even grasp, how the cities we live in got to be the way they are.
It's kind of a whole system view, isn't it? From how you arrange the sofa to like decades of government policy affecting your property value.
Exactly. And understanding this stuff can, well, honestly, it can save you from making some really expensive mistakes.
Okay, so let's dive in. Where do we start? Maybe right at the beginning, that moment you decide to sell and your home has to become something else.
Right? The emotional side. The sources really emphasize this first step. You have to take the "your" out of the house, which sounds kind of tough.
It is tough. I mean, think about it. Your home is your space, full of your memories, your style. But the minute it's for sale, it's not really your home anymore in that
It
sense.
needs to be a product.
Precisely. It has to be this sort of blank canvas, something aspirational that potential buyers can project their lives onto. One source called the start of this process emotional moving day.
Oh, I like that. Emotional moving day. It
Yeah.
nails that mental shift you have to make, right? You have to consciously cut those ties.
You really do. Because if you're still emotionally attached, you're probably going to resist the changes needed for staging. Painting over your favorite color, packing away personal photos.
Things that feel like you. Exactly. So you have to reframe it. Tell yourself, okay, this is a product now. My job is to package it to get the best possible price. Holding on to the emotion just gets in the way.
Okay, so let's say you've made that mental leap. You're ready to package the product. Now come the visual rules. It sounds quite strategic.
Oh, it's very strategic. It's all about creating what they call flow. You want buyers to move easily, both visually and physically, through the house.
So, like, no awkward obstacles.
None. Each room should feel like it naturally leads into the next. The layout, the style, the furniture arrangement, it all needs to work together smoothly.
That means getting rid of barriers, right? I saw this great term in the notes. Furniture blocking the way, especially with its back to the entrance, is called an upholstered sawhorse.
Yes, an upholstered sawhorse. Perfect description, isn't it? It just sounds like something you have to awkwardly get around.
Exactly. You don't want that.
No. You want clear sight lines. The moment someone walks in, their eye should be drawn deeper into the room, maybe towards a great window or a fireplace or whatever the key feature is. You're basically luring them in.
Okay, but then there's the big one, clutter. And staging clutter isn't just about dirty socks, is it? It's about things that might actually be quite nice.
Right. You have to be pretty ruthless. Staging clutter is anything that makes the space feel smaller, too personal, or visually messy.
So what kind of things specifically are we talking about removing, like completely off the premises?
Well, things like freestanding bookcases often have to go. They scream your stuff and they eat up visual space. Nursing rockers, ottomans, those little footstools.
Even useful things like maybe a desk return or a printer table.
Yep, those too. Anything that breaks up the clean lines or makes a room feel crowded, even small area rugs if they don't fit well or define the space properly, they just chop it up visually.
Wow. And TV cabinets, those big bulky ones.
Often, yes. Unless they're very streamlined. They can just dominate a wall and make the room feel smaller. The goal is always to maximize the perception of space and light.
Visual purity, as you said. Okay, so once the clutter is gone, you need to anchor the remaining furniture, right? What does that mean?
Anchoring is about creating a visual center of gravity. Without it, furniture can look like it's just sort of drifting aimlessly in the room. It feels unsettled.
And how do you create that anchor? What's the key tool?
Usually it's a large area rug, and it needs to be the right size big enough to connect the main pieces of furniture in a seating group, for example.
So it ties everything together.
Exactly. It provides a foundation, a sense of order, and calm. Once you have that anchor, then the focal point you want people to notice, maybe a piece of art or a cool lamp, can actually get the attention it deserves instead of getting lost.
That sounds like quite a bit of effort, maybe even some cost involved for the seller. Renting furniture, storing things, maybe buying a new rug. Is staging actually worth it?
The evidence suggests, overwhelmingly, yes. Because buying a home is emotional. even though the transaction is financial. Staging makes it easier for buyers to connect emotionally.
Oh, so?
It reduces the mental work they have to do. If they walk in and immediately start thinking, oh, I'd have to paint that, or where would my sofa go, or this feels cluttered, they're not falling in love.
They're problem solving instead of imagining themselves living there.
Precisely. Good staging removes those mental hurdles. It lets a wider range of buyers instantly feel at home, and that feeling is what leads to faster sales and often higher offers.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the house is staged, it looks great, it's priced. This is where things get, as you said, really interesting. We need to talk about the person guiding this whole process, the
Yeah.
real estate agent.
Ah, yes, the agent. Their job, ostensibly, is to find that sweet spot in pricing, right? Not too high to scare buyers off, not too low to leave your money on the table.
But there's a potential conflict of interest here, based on how they get paid.
There is. It's a classic principal-agent problem. The agent is working for you, the principal, but their own financial incentives might not perfectly align with yours. The Freakonomics study you mentioned highlights this beautifully.
And that study compared how agents sell their own homes versus their clients' homes. What was the key difference they found?
It was pretty stark, actually. They found that agents tend to keep their own houses on the market longer, about 10 days longer on average.
10 extra days. And did that translate into a better price for them?
It did, significantly better. They sold their own homes for over 3% more on average than they sold similar homes for their clients.
Okay, let's make that concrete. On a, say, $300,000 house, 3% is.
$9,000, almost $10,000 more that ends up in the seller's pocket.
Wow. Okay, so why don't agents push just as hard for their clients? What's the mechanism behind that difference?
It comes down to the commission structure. Let's say the agent gets a 3% commission on the sale price. If they work those extra 10 days, handle more showings, more hassle to get you that extra $10,000.
How much more money do they actually make?
Well, 3% of that extra $10,000 is only $300. But wait, typically the commission is split between the buying and selling agent, and then the agent has to split with their broker. So the agent's personal gain might only be, say, $150.
$150
Yeah.
for nearly 2 extra weeks of work and stress.
Exactly. That extra $150 is often just not a strong enough incentive for the agent to go through all that extra effort and uncertainty compared to securing a slightly quicker, slightly lower, but definite sale for you.
So their incentive leans towards speed and getting the deal done, moving on to the next one.
Generally, yes. They have the advantage of information. They know the market, the process better than you do. And the structure subtly encourages them to nudge you towards accepting an earlier, perhaps slightly lower offer than they might accept for their own property.
That's sobering. So as a seller, what's the takeaway? How do you protect yourself?
Awareness is the first step. Just knowing this dynamic exists helps you evaluate their advice more critically. You can also set clear expectations up front, discuss pricing strategy thoroughly, and maybe even explore commission structures that offer bonuses for achieving a higher price. But mostly, it's about being informed.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit now. We've talked about prepping one house, dealing with one agent. But what determines the value of any house in the bigger picture? There's a fundamental rule here, isn't there? Something in Latin.
Ah, yes. Res tantum vale quantum vendi potest.
Which means?
A thing is worth only what someone else will pay for it. It sounds simple, maybe obvious, but it's crucial. Your house isn't worth what you paid or what you spent fixing it up or what you need to get out of it. It's worth what the market is willing to pay right now.
And the market means perception, demand.
Exactly. And that demand shifts, leading to market cycles. You hear about buyers' markets? Lots of homes for sale, low prices, buyers have the upper hand. And then sellers' markets homes sell fast, often over asking. Sellers are in control.
Knowing which cycle you're in seems pretty important.
It's critical. But here's the tricky part. Knowing exactly where you are in the cycle, are we nearing the peak?
Yeah.
Hitting the bottom is incredibly difficult in real time. Hindsight makes it clear, but making decisions looking forward, that's tough.
And getting that timing wrong, especially if you're investing or developing, could be disastrous.
Hugely. Market cycle risk is one of the biggest factors in real estate. So if we're thinking like an investor, we need tools that go beyond just gut feelings about the market. We need hard numbers.
Right. And for income properties especially, investors rely on specific metrics. 2 key ones are net operating income NOI and the capitalization rate, or cap rate. Let's break down NOI first.
Okay. NOI is basically the property's profit from its day-to-day operations before you factor in things like mortgage payments or income taxes.
How'd you calculate it?
You start with your potential total rent,
Mm-hmm.
the gross scheduled income, then you subtract an allowance for vacancies and tenants who don't pay vacancy and credit loss, and then you subtract all your operating expenses.
What counts as an operating expense? Things like property tax, insurance, repairs.
Exactly. Property management fees, utilities if the landlord pays them, regular maintenance, property taxes, insurance, those sorts of things.
But crucially, you said it doesn't include the mortgage payment.
Yeah,
Or depreciation. Or income taxes. Why leave those out?
because NOI is designed to measure the property's inherent profitability, regardless of how you financed it or your personal tax situation. Your mortgage reflects your financing choices, not the building's performance. Depreciation is an accounting concept, a non-cash expense, and taxes depend on the owner. Taking those out lets you compare the operational efficiency of different properties on an apples-to-apples basis.
I see. It isolates the property's earning power. And once you have that NOI number, you can use the cap rate.
Right. The cap rate or capitalization rate links the property's income, the NOI, to its market value. It's essentially the rate of return an investor expects to get on that type of property in that particular market.
So how does the formula work?
Simple formula. Cap rate equals NOI value or price. Investors use this all the time. If you know the typical cap rate for similar properties in the area is, say, 10%, and your property generates $12,000 in NOI per year.
Then you can estimate its value. $12,000 divided by 10%, or 0.10, gives you $120,000.
Exactly. It tells you what the market thinks that income stream is worth.
Hmm.
Or you can flip it. If you know the price and the NOI, you can calculate the cap rate to see if it meets your return expectations.
That seems like a really powerful tool for investors comparing deals, but maybe a bit much for someone just starting out or looking at single-family rentals.
It can be, which is why there's a simpler rule of thumb, a quick filter, the 1% rule.
The 1% rule. Okay, what's that?
It's just a quick check. It suggests a rental property is likely to have positive cash flow if its monthly rent is at least 1% of the purchase price.
So if you buy a place for $100,000, you'd want the rent to be at least $1,000 a month.
That's the idea. Or a $200,000 property should rent for at least $2,000 a month. It's not a perfect analysis. It doesn't account for varying expenses like taxes or insurance, but it's a great first pass.
It helps you quickly weed out deals that probably won't make financial sense from a cash flow perspective.
Right. If a $300,000 house only rents for $1,500, immediately it fails the 1% test. And it's probably not worth digging deeper into the NOI and cap rate unless there's some unusual upside.
Okay, one more piece of the investor math puzzle. Leverage. Using borrowed money, we hear about equity financing using owner's capital.
Right. Equity gives you flexibility. You can bring in partners, but you give up some ownership or control. Debt financing loans is where leverage really comes in.
And leverage is how people can build wealth quickly in real estate, right? Controlling a big asset with less of your own cash.
It is. It magnifies your returns on the cash you put in. But, and this is a huge but, it also magnifies your risk.
Especially if you borrow a lot of the purchase price, like those zero-down loans.
Exactly. The sources warn about loans requiring 0% down, like some government-backed programs. They mean you're leveraging yourself to an exceptionally high degree.
And if the market dips, or you have unexpected vacancies or repairs,
You can be underwater very quickly. High leverage can turn even a decent deal into a bad one if things go slightly wrong. It requires really careful planning and having cash reserves. Leverage is powerful, but cuts both ways.
Now, let's really broaden the lens. We need to talk about the context all this happens in the cities and suburbs themselves. The sources point out that the way American places are built is actually kind of unusual globally.
It really is. Compared to many other parts of the world, U.S. cities and suburbs tend to have very low population density. And we have this really strict separation of land uses.
You mean like housing's over here, shopping is over there, offices are somewhere else entirely?
Pretty much. We zone for separation. Residential, commercial, industrial, they generally don't mix much. This is quite different from the traditional pattern of cities where people lived above the shop or close to where they worked.
And one particular type of housing gets special treatment in this system, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. The detached single-family home on its own lot with a yard. Our zoning laws, as detailed in Zoned in the USA, essentially give this form legal preference.
How so?
Well, zoning often declares the single-family home incompatible with other types of housing, like apartments or townhouses or with nearby commercial uses. So you end up with these huge zones where only detached single-family homes are legal to build. It outlaws other forms of urbanization.
Which contributes to that low density and separation we talked about.
Absolutely. And this wasn't just an accident of planning. Federal policy played a huge role in actively shaping this landscape, especially after World War II.
You're talking about the Federal Housing Administration, the FHA.
Yes, the FHA's loan guarantee programs were instrumental in financing the massive suburban boom. But crucially, their policies systematically reinforced segregation, both by income and, very explicitly, by race.
How did they do that? Was it just reflecting existing biases?
It went beyond reflecting. It codified those biases into official policy. The FHA adopted discriminatory attitudes from the real estate industry and baked them into their underwriting manuals. This led directly to the practice known as redlining.
Redlining. We hear that term a lot. What did it actually mean on the ground?
It meant FHA appraisers would literally draw red lines on maps around neighborhoods they deemed hazardous for investment, often based on the age of the housing, or, crucially, the racial or ethnic makeup of the residents.
And if your neighborhood was redlined?
You couldn't get an FHA-insured mortgage. And since banks relied heavily on that insurance, it meant getting any mortgage became incredibly difficult, if not impossible. We're talking entire city neighborhoods essentially cut off from financing.
Wow. So the FHA was actively channeling investment away from older, diverse city neighborhoods and towards new, homogeneous suburbs.
That's exactly what happened. By 1966, one source notes, the FHA held zero mortgages in places like Camden, New Jersey. This starved urban areas of capital, suppressed property values, and prevented residents, particularly minority families, from building wealth through homeownership.
While simultaneously subsidizing wealth building in the suburbs.
Precisely. It created this stark divide. Inner cities often became predominantly renter communities, sometimes with landlords who had little incentive to maintain properties because tenants had few other options, while suburbs flourished with new construction and appreciating home values.
And this historical pattern connects to the public perception, right? The idea of the declining inner city versus the prosperous suburb.
Yes, the physical deterioration and concentration of poverty in red-lined areas, fueled by disinvestment, became associated with the people living there, reinforcing negative stereotypes. It created a self-fulfilling prophecy of decline that benefited the newer suburbs.
But that cycle isn't static, is it? Some sources suggest those older inner-ring suburbs are now facing their own problems.
They are. Many post-war suburbs are now dealing with aging infrastructure, populations that are getting older and sometimes less wealthy, and a tax base heavily reliant on residential property values that might not be growing like they used to. They're facing some of the same fiscal pressures the cities faced decades ago.
Which leads us to this concept of the new urban crisis. What's the paradox there?
The paradox is that many big cities today are incredibly successful engines of innovation, magnets for talent and capital. You have these booming superstar cities. But at the same time,
They're also incredibly unequal.
exactly. The very success drives up land costs and construction costs to astronomical levels, especially for high-rise buildings, which are often the only way to build densely.
So it becomes almost impossible to build anything but luxury housing.
Pretty much. If the cost to build a new apartment means you have to rent it for, say, $4,000 a month just to break even, there's no financial incentive for a private developer to build housing for moderate or low-income people at, say, $1,500.
So the market primarily delivers high-end housing, which pushes prices up across the board and makes affordability a massive challenge.
A massive challenge. And not just for the poor. The data shows low and moderate income families are severely squeezed. One example from New York City showed thousands of affordable units lost, while median rents jumped significantly in the mid-2000s.
It's hitting the middle class, too.
Yes. That Manhattan study is striking, finding that middle-income neighborhoods were basically disappearing. The borough was polarizing into high-income and low-income areas.
So the housing landscape we see today, the sprawling suburbs, the expensive city centers, the affordability crisis, it's not just about current markets. It's deeply rooted in these historical policies and their long-lasting consequences.
Absolutely. The choices you have about where and how to live are profoundly shaped by this history of zoning, financing, and segregation.
Okay, so given this complex picture, the psychology, the market math, the historical context, how does an individual actually succeed, whether you're buying, selling, or investing? The sources seem to come back to mindset.
They really do. Persistence seems key, especially for investors. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. You need a strong motivation, what one source calls a big why.
A big why. What does that mean?
It's that deep-seated reason why you're doing this. It's what turns a want to, I want to be a successful investor, into a have to, I have to make this work. It's about imperative, not just desire.
Like the drive that kept inventors like Edison or Ford going through failure after failure.
Exactly, that kind of persistence. You have to be willing to stick with it, learn from mistakes, and keep taking action, especially during the tough times when you're not seeing immediate results.
And one very practical way that persistence shows up is in follow-up, right? Especially in finding deals or clients.
Oh, absolutely. That story about the broker who landed a huge $17 million deal after 4 years and more than 100 follow-ups, that says it all.
100 follow-ups. Most people would give up after 2 or 3 tries.
Right. Following up a quick email, a call, it's simple, it doesn't cost much, but most people just don't do it consistently. That consistent, low-effort contact is what often separates the really successful players. It keeps you top of mind for when the opportunity finally arises.
Okay, so persistence gets you to the table. Now you have to negotiate. And the advice here might challenge some common ideas about being nice.
Yeah, the traditional win-win approach gets questioned. One source, never split the difference, argues that aiming for compromise can actually be ineffective or even backfire, especially if the other side is playing hardball, aiming for a win-lose outcome.
So you need to be prepared to stand your ground.
You need to be prepared to advocate strongly for your interests while still being strategic. It's not about being aggressive necessarily, but about understanding the dynamics and not just giving things away to seem agreeable.
And tact is still important, especially if you're dealing with someone in a tough situation like a distressed seller.
Tact is crucial then. Remember, sellers often give better deals to buyers they like and respect. Going in with aggressive, lowball, take it or leave it, tactics marks you as an amateur and often backfires.
Why is that?
Because if someone is already feeling stressed, maybe facing foreclosure or some other hardship, they're often dealing with shame and loss of control. The last thing they want is to feel bullied or disrespected. They might actually walk away from a slightly better offer from someone they dislike just to maintain some dignity.
So empathy can actually be a negotiating advantage.
It absolutely can. Understanding their situation, being respectful, can open doors that aggression slams shut. It's about finding those decisive moments in the conversation.
Decisive moments.
Yeah, negotiation isn't always a smooth line. It's often a series of key points, key interactions that shape the final outcome. A seller might reject an offer one day, but if their circumstances change or they get worried, they might accept that same low offer the next day. Timing and understanding the other person's pressure points are key.
Makes sense. Now, across all this, finding deals, negotiating, managing properties, it sounds like trying to do everything yourself is a bad idea.
A very bad idea, especially if you want to scale up or just, enjoy the process more. You need a team.
The sources talk about a core 4. Who are they?
Right, the essential players for an investor. Number 1, a deal finder could be a great agent, a wholesaler, someone finding opportunities. Number 2, a lender, your source for capital, whether a bank or private money.
Okay.
Number 3, a reliable contractor, crucial for rehabs and maintenance. And number 4, a property manager, or PM.
Let's talk about the property manager. Why are they so valuable, beyond just collecting rent?
Well, good PMs do more than collect rent. They screen tenants, handle repairs efficiently, understand landlord-tenant law. They basically shorten your vacancy periods and deal with the day-to-day headaches.
And they provide a buffer.
A huge buffer. One source highlights how the PM allows you, the owner, to remain sort of anonymous. If a tenant makes an unreasonable request, the PM can be the one to say no.
They can blame the anonymous owner.
Exactly. Sorry, the owner won't approve that.
Yeah.
It preserves your relationship with the tenant, potentially, while still enforcing the rules. The PM takes the heat.
Clever. So beyond that core 4, good advisors are also critical, like legal and tax help.
Non-negotiable if you're serious about building wealth. Real estate is full of tax advantages, but the rules can be complex. Knowing the loopholes is essential.
Loopholes like depreciation.
Depreciation is a big one. It's a paper loss that can offset your actual rental income, reducing your taxable income even if the property is cash flowing. But you need to understand how it works.
And things like 1031 exchanges, those sound complicated.
They can be, especially for certain property types.
Yeah.
A 1031 exchange lets you sell an investment property and defer paying capital gains tax if you reinvest the proceeds into another like-kind property. It's a powerful wealth-building tool.
But there are strict rules, right? You mentioned vacation homes as an example.
Yes, that's a great example of where you need precise knowledge. To qualify a vacation home, you sometimes rent out for a 1031 exchange. When you sell it, you have to meet specific usage tests in the 2 years before the sale.
Okay, what are the tests? How much do you have to rent it versus use it yourself?
Two key numbers. First, you must have rented it out at fair market value for at least 14 days in each of those 2 years.
Okay, minimum 2 weeks rental per year.
And second, this is the crucial one. Your personal use of the property cannot exceed the greater of 14 days or 10% of the total days it was rented out in each of those 2 years.
So basically, don't use your investment vacation home too much yourself if you want that tax deferral. Keep personal use to 2 weeks or less, generally.
That's the safest bet for most people to ensure compliance. If you use it for, say, 15 days in one of those years, boom, the IRS could disallow the entire 1031 exchange and you'd owe all that capital gains tax immediately.
Wow, those details really matter. That's where having good tax advice pays for itself.
Absolutely. Understanding these rules or having advisors who do is the difference between smart investing and potentially costly mistakes.
Hashtag tag outro.
Well, we have covered a lot of ground today, from the deep psychology of detaching from your home to sell it.
All the way through staging rules, agent incentives, market cycles,
The hard math of investment analysis with NOI and cap rates.
and then zooming out to the really big picture, how decades of zoning and FHA policy shaped the very neighborhoods we live in today.
And finally, back down to practical strategies, persistence, negotiation tactics, building that essential team.
It really shows that success in real estate, whether you're just buying your first home or building an empire, isn't about just one thing. It's this blend, isn't it? Emotional intelligence, sharp analysis, and understanding the historical and systemic context.
You really have to see the whole system, not just the individual house or deal.
Yeah. You need to understand the incentives, the history, the rules you're playing by.
So what's the final takeaway for everyone listening? What does all this mean? Well, it means these aren't just financial decisions. They're deeply personal and shaped by forces bigger than us.
And we wanted to leave you with a final thought, something connecting all this back to, well, you. One source reminds us that our identity kind of grows out of our habits, our actions. Every choice we make is like casting a vote for the person we want to be.
So think about this. The choice of where you live. Is it that low-density suburb, maybe built on the legacy of those FHA policies? Is it the pricey, dynamic urban core shaped by gentrification? Is it a rental property you acquired through careful planning and persistence?
That choice, that action, it's more than just a transaction, isn't it?
It's one of the biggest votes you cast. A vote for the kind of community you inhabit, the kind of financial future you're building, and ultimately the kind of life you aspire to live. It's worth thinking about.